Okay, so today we're looking at the book Loveability, and we're reading chapter 9, that love has no conditions. So what young people want to know probably is, how is that possible that young people can fall in love and that love has no conditions? So maybe they could be more confident that they could stay in love that way, because it seems like for most part, what happens is that people fall in love, they begin to get together and they share their lives, and then things happen in their lives where they begin to have conditions about their love, and it seems like they fall out of love. And so in this country, in many countries, there is a high divorce rate, people not knowing how to set up the conditions about their love relationships and finding them failing. Many times people hanging on to those love relationships for years or even decades where they feel unhappy. So that's something about young people that I would hope that new research and new information and new thinking might actually change that situation. Now, Katie, I wonder if you would like to read chapter 9 for us. It's a short chapter.
Yes.
It's called Love Has No Conditions. Thank you.
Love has no conditions. Sam is an actor. He's in his early 20s. He lives in Notting Hill, London, and also in Venice Beach, Los Angeles. We first met at one of my public programs called Love's Philosophy, which explores the relationship between spiritual and romantic love. After that, Sam signed up for some occasional one-to-one coaching sessions with me. In the short time I've known Sam, about 3 years, he has fallen in love at least 6 times. On each occasion, he believed he'd met the one, as he put it. Now the latest love of his life had left him, and Sam was distraught again. We set up an appointment to meet. I thought she was the one, said Sam, hanging his head down over his heart. Why was she the one? I asked. It felt so right, he replied. How so? She made me feel so good about myself. How did she do that? I asked. She was also so beautiful. Really, I said. She was a model, said Sam. Our conversation was disjointed. Sam barely registered my questions. He was in a lot of pain. Tears fell into his hands. He didn't want the tissue. Occasionally, his body shuddered from head to toe, as if it were trying to shake something off itself. I had seen Sam this way before. He was always so up when he met a new girl, and so down on himself when it didn't work out. I'm confused, boss, he said over and over again. Much of what Sam said wasn't spoken directly to me. It was like he was talking to himself or to his mother, who had died on the day of his 8th birthday, or to God maybe. At one point he said, all I want is to love somebody enough that they don't leave. How did you meet her? I asked. I think I manifested her, said Sam. How did you do that? I went to a law of attraction seminar in LA, he told me. What happens at one of those? First, you make a picture of your ideal mate, and then you affirm that she exists, and then you ask the universe to send her to you. And the universe delivers the pizza. Pizza, I said. I guess so, said Sam, who like me wasn't sure where the pizza comment had come from. When I asked Sam about the picture he had made, he pulled out a folded piece of white paper from his wallet, opened it up, and read to me a wish list that included physical features like dark hair, green eyes, thin lips, nice smile, perfect body, Italian looking, and also other qualities like artistic, spiritual, successful, and good sense of humor. When he finished, he gave me the list to look at. Alongside the list was a cut-out magazine photo of the actress Demi Moore. At the top of the page, Sam had written, "The one!" in big, bold, capital letters. The day after the Law of Attraction seminar, Sam boarded a British Airways evening flight from LAX. LAX?
That's right, LAX.
LAX to Heathrow. As he was about to take a seat in premium economy, a flight attendant told him he was to be upgraded to Club World business class. His new seat was 3A. Sitting in seat 3B was the model. I don't recall Sam giving me her name. Sam told me how they got talking and then that they talked all through the night with no sleep until their plane parked at its gate at Terminal 5. She was everything on my list, said Sam, who was clearly impressed with the universe. The first date on the ground, as Sam put it, was the Ivy restaurant in London's West End. It was perfect, said Sam. How so? She looked stunning. Everyone noticed us. We were such a good fit, he said. We laughed and talked all evening. The sommelier even poured us a glass of complimentary champagne at the end of the night and suggested we make a toast to young love. It must have felt like you were on a film set, I said. Exactly. I can include it better. Exactly, said Sam, and we fell in love that night, or so I thought. Later, Sam took the model back to his flat in Notting Hill. It was their second night together if you include the plane trip, and once again they got no sleep. Sam described chemistry between them as insane, and the best ever. So what happened on your second date, I asked. I missed it, said Sam. How so? Well, after our first proper night together, explained Sam, I realized that she had the most perfect body. She's a model, remember? Yeah, I remember, I said. Well, compared to her, I'm way out of shape, he said. So I signed up at the local gym and started working out. I set myself a goal of 10,000 daily sit-ups and 500 daily push-ups. Anyway, 2 hours before our second date, I collapsed in the gym with a suspected hernia. I called her from the locker room and told her I had to cancel. Did you tell her what had happened? I asked. No way, no way, no way, said Sam. That's a pity, I said. Why? Well, you could have found out if she had a sense of humor. Sam and the model met up every few days over the next 2 months. It was all going so well. And then I ruined it. And then I ruined it, said Sam. How did you do that? I asked. I'm not exactly sure. Give me something specific, I pressed him. I started feeling not good enough, said Sam. She's a model. She's really successful. She earns more money than I do. Most of her friends are famous. I guess I began to doubt myself. Did you tell her any of this? No way, said Sam. After 2 months, the model went away to Florence for a long weekend for a photo shoot. We started to miss fire after that, said Sam. How so? We just cooled off, I guess. Why? Something was missing, I guess. What was it? I asked. I think she withdrew from me, said Sam. Or maybe you withdrew from her, I said. Maybe. And did you talk about this? I asked. No way, said Sam. Sam and the model hadn't spoken for 8 days, which was a sure sign in Sam's mind that the romance was over. When I suggested that Sam call her, he told me that wasn't a good idea. She's gone, he said. I'm sorry, I said. Me too, said Sam. Are you really sure you were both in love? Yeah, I thought so, said Sam, but now I'm not sure if I have ever been in love. That must be very confusing, I said. Yeah, you bet. Sam felt silent. He looked like he was replaying in his mind the events of the past 3 months, putting all the pieces together, trying to understand what had happened, feeling the grief of another love lost. Why did you leave me? He asked at last, shaking his head. You could ask her, you know, I suggested. What went wrong? Do you know Sam? Sam drew a heavy breath into his chest. He didn't answer my question. Instead, he came back with a question of his own. How do you know if someone really loves you and if you really love them? Those are good questions, Sam, I said. I want answers, Doc, he said as he lifted his gaze from the floor. And I needed them quick before I fall in love again. Like Sam, my early romances were full of infatuation and fantasy. I carried around a deep yearning to fall in love. I wanted it more than anything, even though I had no idea what love was. As the old saying goes, I was in love with the idea of being in love. Some of my friends fell in love with lots of girls. I was waiting for my love to show up. In the meantime, rather than think seriously about love, I carried on learning the guitar, playing cricket, hanging out with the cool crowd, and generally putting myself out there. Love waits on welcome, not on time. A Course in Miracles. Sam had thought about love. He was a keen student of Buddhism. He talked openly about his high regard of Jesus and Jesus' teaching on forgiveness. When in LA, he attended a study group for A Course in Miracles. When in London, he would keep Monday nights free to go to lectures on spirituality hosted by alternatives at St. James Church in Piccadilly. Intellectually, Sam understood that love is bigger than romance. He could tell you that romance doesn't create love, but rather love is what creates romance. And yet when it came to romance, he was always falling in love, but he was not able to enjoy the grace and happiness of being in love. Lovability is what makes romance possible. When you know you are lovable and you remember your eternal loveliness, you are attractive in the highest sense. Oh boy. Sam thought that the law of attraction was simply about thinking positive thoughts and saying happy affirmations, but that's not the heart of it. The heart of the law of attraction starts with how you see yourself. Literally, you attract what you identify with. Therefore, if you feel lovable, you are attracting loving relationships because that's what you relate to. If you don't feel lovable, you attract something that isn't love because that's what you relate to. It's the love you feel inside yourself that helps you to know if the love you have with someone is real or not. Ooh, damn.
So a lot of ideas came up in here for me while I was listening to this chapter. I realized that I'm similar to what the author was talking about. I'm a person who had a long history of romances, and unlike Sam, I didn't find myself changing quite a lot in between romances, but I did find myself wondering about it. Why wouldn't it be possible to have a romance that would last into the everyday mundane and the difficulties and the changes that might occur as life goes on? It did occur to me many times, like, why does it seem so difficult to fall in love? Isn't hard. It doesn't seem really. I still don't think it's hard to do that. But then to stay in love or to select what is right about a person, so it seems like that the love can be sustained. It seemed a lot of questions came up in my mind during the course of those many years. So I know for young people, it might seem quite a mystery about how does it happen that when I fall in love and I think everything's just perfect, that it just doesn't seem to be able to continue that way. Why does it have to change? So here,
I have some answers.
good, I'm going to ask you about it. Here in this chapter, the hint is here that love waits on welcome, not on time. And also, remember the chapter title was Love Has No Conditions. So maybe the author is pushing us in a sort of direction here with his research and his many years of practice of working with people. Maybe he's sort of pushing us in this direction. Do you think it's right? Do you think that love should have no conditions? And do you think that love waits on welcome, not on time? And do you think that we set up our failing with love in our own minds first before that is actually what happens? And go ahead, Katie, if you want to have answers to any of that.
I have answers to all of them.
All of it, okay. Mhm. You got the floor.
Yeah, I take my mic. Testing the mic. Mic is working. Yeah, the first question I think was, should love be unconditional? And I think yes, it should be, because if I want to be in a relationship, I want to feel free. And I also want that the person can be himself, because I want to connect. I can only connect truly with the person when I allow the person to be the person. If I'm not allowing the person to be himself, he would have to try wear a mask, and then I wouldn't see why I am with the person in a relationship, because relationship means to relate to each other in a honest and deeper level. And And yeah, also I think if it's unconditional, the sharing is more. I'm more when the love is unconditional, and I think to myself, I want to love unconditional. I'm more willing and I'm more motivated. I'm I'm thrown I'm thrown into the place of asking myself, what can I give? When I say it's conditional, love should be conditional. I could easily take the card and say, okay, love is conditional, so you have to make this and this and this, and then I'm happy with you. But when I say it's unconditional, I'm more on the I can see I have to ask myself, what can I give? And it's more about abundance. And yeah, so that's the answer. And what were the other two questions? The other was
Lovability is seemingly we fall out of love. Our own self, it seems like we fall out of love. Now, maybe they did fall out of love, or maybe they actually set up the conditions for love in their minds unconsciously. I don't know. Do you think that they had conditions for love in their minds when they met on the airplane, and that those conditions weren't really clear even to themselves?
yeah, because they had expectations and judgments about themselves, and then they look for like they make themselves to a tiny little puzzle piece, and then they're looking, and they are not a tiny little puzzle piece. They are the universe. Make themselves to a tiny little puzzle piece, dream about that, and then they dream they need another puzzle piece.
Okay.
And instead of seeing I'm the
Puzzle
universe and the
pieces.
other is the universe, and then
So puzzle pieces in your mind, you're relating them to the aspects of what love is. If you would break it down into how does love actually work, it seems like a puzzle. And it seems like we need to have all the pieces to make the puzzle so it will stay together. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, that's also an idea to look at that. I mean, I make myself as a spiritual being to a puzzle.
Okay,
Like
so
I reduce my let me I would say I am love, but I only love myself under these and these conditions. And when I have conditions, I can't experience myself as love. Then I experience myself as the ego, and looking for an alternative, a replacement of love.
let's get back to the visual part of this. So what you're thinking then that you narrow down the number of pieces that you can relate to. Is that what you're saying? You don't relate to the whole puzzle anymore after a while. It just sort of becomes just the one piece that you're having this moment,
Yeah,
one piece of the puzzle, and it doesn't seem to fit with the other next piece, because the next piece comes along and you examine it and you say to yourself, I don't like that piece. It doesn't work in my puzzle. I'm not ready for that piece yet. Just
yeah,
like
that's
that.
right.
Okay. So it's good if we stay with things that are visual, because most people can learn from a more visual sort of experience. So I see, I'm going to tell a story real quick about love, my relationships a long time ago, because I have nothing really to worry about whether people listen to it or don't. I don't really care. But I'll tell you the truth. I found myself in these situations many, many, many times during the course of many, many years. One thing that happened in one particular story is I met a woman, and I had gone not to law of attraction or anything like that, but I had thought to myself, like, what kind of woman would really work out for me? I think the best. So I selected in my mind that it would be an artist, and that she would have some real confidence in her work, and that she would, of course, be beautiful, and she would be the right height, not too short, not too tall, not, just perfect for me. And I thought to myself, like, well, that could be from anywhere from 5'6", or maybe a little bit taller than that, probably up to maybe 5'10". And so in those 4 inches, I thought, well, that's a lot of women. That should work. And I thought to myself, what her body should look like in general terms, at least anyway, and how I should be interested in her when I look at her and we speak together. Should I be interested in her facial qualities, the way I experience her face? So these are things I was thinking about. So in the city where I lived at that time, there were many different art openings at galleries for artists to show their work. And so I would start to go to a lot of these art showings, and I began to find some fascination with some of the art also. And I participated with some of the discussion things or talked to some of the artists and so on and so forth. And I was taking my time and being just very friendly and nice and enjoying what I was doing. They had wine sometimes and little snacks and like that. And so I would have a nice time. Anyway, I didn't meet my girl of my dreams at the art openings. As it turned out, I met her in something else that I was doing altogether different, but she was an artist and she was attractive in the kind of way I liked to enjoy looking at her. She was the right height, she was the right body build, and so on and so forth. And I thought to myself, well, here she is, she's the one. So I kind of invested myself similar to Sam. Everything about my day seemed to all of a sudden revolve around this person that I had met. Suddenly my day was changed. I was in love. I was feeling light and energetic, and we had sex lots of times, and it was all exciting. And I thought to myself, isn't this wonderful? We went to eat at certain places. We enjoyed ourselves every time we went out, everything that we did. I began to stay at her place, even began to have some clothes there because I would stay overnight and then I would need to go to work the next day. And it went on and on and on, and it became more fascinating as time went on until all of a sudden there was some problems that I couldn't really identify. I'm not sure, I don't even know if I could now. But suddenly she asked me questions a lot about her and how my acceptance of her and what my thinking of her was about. Why did I like her? What did I see in her? And all these different kind of questions that she would ask me. And to tell you the truth, it was quite annoying, actually, to continually have to answer questions about how I felt about her, what I saw in her, what I loved in her and liked in her, and all that sort of thing, because it would come up oftentimes when she seemed a little disturbed. But at least she was looking into whether or not she wanted to remain disturbed or not. And every time it seemed like I kind of won out, like she wasn't going to remain disturbed. Now, what it was that she seemed to be puzzling over something maybe similar to what you're talking about the puzzle pieces. Maybe things didn't seem to jive up with her, and she wanted to examine the puzzle piece that she was currently wondering about or whatever. And so she would ask me all the questions. Now, you wouldn't know this because I got over it eventually, but at that time, I didn't like questions from people. I really didn't like to stop and be contemplative and think about what the person was asking and how I might best answer that question and all that sort of thing. I thought that was very disturbing. And all I really wanted was to hug and kiss and watch some shows and go to dinner and have a nice time. And I began to see why.
Without speaking about you, without a spiritual connection and showing who you are inside of yourself with your deepest fears and dreams.
I didn't really weigh the two against each other because I'm going to be as honest as I can about it. I just didn't want to do it. And I didn't want to do it her way. And it didn't interfere enough that I want to leave her. But many times she seemed disturbed like this. So she was going through something that I wasn't going through. She was going through some kind of emotional change that I wasn't going through. My problem with speaking about myself was something that I knew about and I didn't want to do it. But every time she would ask me her questions and she would seem disturbed, I would see that it helped for me to talk about and answer her questions. I still didn't like it, however, but I saw that it was actually worked. So I actually participated. So my way of dealing with emotional disturbance is different than different people I saw. And I noticed that because I was actually involved in some of that kind of work. It became clear to me that I was being asked to do something that I didn't like to do, but it was actually had a useful purpose because actually it settled some problems for another person. So it actually was helpful in a way, although I didn't understand quite exactly what it was I was being helpful with. I did see that the result of it seemed to be lightening her and helping her to relax and helping her to have comfort with being with me. So that's my story. And It's nothing like Sam's, I think. But on the other hand, there's common elements to all these stories. And in fact, it seems like the puzzle sort of approach also, it seemed to me like she was kind of working a puzzle like that. Like things were mysterious to her, but she was wanting to ask about them and get some answers so she can make her puzzle make sense to her.
I think it's also about not sharing everything. Like I will share with you sex and kisses, but I don't want to share with you what's inside me. Like I don't want to share what I think is dark about me. And I saw that with me and my neighbor. He's interested in Course in Miracles stuff, and so he was looking at my phone when I was reading some meditations. And first I was like, "Don't look at my phone. That's my privacy." And then I thought to myself, I really like it when someone's interested in that, so I let him read it, and I saw I was projecting the judgments I have about myself on him, and it's not bringing me closer to people I see.
So oftentimes people are going to be stuck in sort of a dilemma. And one thing, I'll tell just another quick story. One thing that I've noticed about this is from a book called The End of Guilt by Edwin Navarro. Is a book that recently I read with some people in online discussion similar to this. And when we read that book, it became evident to most of us that what happens is that we get stuck in the guilt paradigm. And what I mean by that is it seems like everything either has to do with guilt or shame or blame, and or it has to do with our protecting ourselves from guilt or shame or blame and judgment. And so it turned out, as we began to talk about that, as we began to, some of us did some little bit of research about it, we began to find out that indeed people seem to get stuck in their dilemmas. And when they do get stuck in their dilemmas, of course, they might be quite uncomfortable. And even though they handle that differently, because they're uncomfortable and because they have a dilemma in their mind, it seems like they get stuck with that. And there seems to be two ways out. One is the way that my woman that I was talking about, that she seemed to deal with it by asking questions and by trying to get out her disturbance by finding out facts about the other people in her life. Or it seemed like my way, let's just have a nice time. Let's relax. Let's be peaceful. Let's be calm. Let's enjoy each other. Let's do things we like to do together. It seemed like my way also helps to get people out of that. So that's always been my way, is to say, like, let's try to lighten things up. When I'm disturbed, I don't want to be around anybody. And so I have this idea about myself is when I'm disturbed, who the hell would want to be with me? I just want to get to myself and return back to being peaceful. I need rest, or I need to have a nice meal, or I need to do something enjoyable that I love to do so I can lighten myself up and get out of this pissy bad mood and not disturb people with my bad mood and my ugliness and my, lack of interest and so on and so forth. I become sort of narcissistic, I think, when I'm upset. So that's my method. Her method was when she gets sort of upset and frustrated and finding everything to be difficult for her, she confronts the issue. She brings herself to be square in front of the people that she's having a problem with, and she gets sort of mildly aggressive, but she's not really aggressive. She's assertive to an edge, right to the edge of assertiveness. She never disrespects the people. I can tell you lots of stories about her with other people or with myself. She never acts in such a way as to be unacceptable, but she always pushes to get her answers, to see what, in fact, she can learn about her situation with the other people that she seems to be upset about. She seems to see, in a sense, that the upset is within herself, but she seems to see it's related to her speculation or her wondering or her difficulties that the way that she perceives it. And she seems to have found out that it's interesting and might even be helpful to ask questions instead of just to go on the assumptions and be disturbed and become depressed. So every story, I think, has a little bit of difference about the two people that might be involved, but also has a lot of similarities. But the one thing that I found that always seems to be there is the dilemma. And do we have a way to deal with our own dilemma? Do I know how to relax and get peaceful again and calm again? Or in her case, does she know how to get the answers that she needs to satisfy herself? And so similar thing happened when we read the book called The End of Guilt. We found that each of us has a slightly different approach to doing things, but that we found we have to get ourselves out of our funk. And there's a way that we can do that if we pay attention to the fact that we got into a funk. We normally can find our way out of it. And we normally have had already developed some kind of skill to be able to do that. So that's what we learned together, she and I. And so that's what I learned also with some other people in The End of Guilt. And you might say, well, does that mean that you're looking for that? And I'm saying, well, I think I'm looking for the development of these ideas because I think they're successful. And so I'm doing research and talking to people and then publishing my videos and so on about it, because I think it's true that we need to work out our difficulties and we need to include how it seems to work for other people so we can see there needs to be acceptance about our difficulties and also acceptance about the fact that there must be a way to work them out. So that's what I was sharing with those two stories that I told you about. Let's go on to the next chapter before we talk about much more about this. And I wonder if, Baba, if you would read this next chapter. It's called Is This Love? Where they go through some ideas about trying to recognize what love is.
All right. Can you hear me?
Sorry?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, if you stay right there where you're at.
No, I can't hear you.
Oh.
No, I can't hear you when I say can.
Sometimes
Sorry.
Katie and Baba, by the way, and in case it happens, sometimes Katie and Baba talk in German because they're both German and English is a second language. So sometimes they clarify things with each other.
Yes, I will begin.
Okay.
Is this love? We are obsessed in our society with falling in love. It is a social fever that provokes a delirium in us from a young age. Cast your mind back to your school days. Do you remember how old you were when you and your friends first talked about boyfriends and girlfriends? Do you remember how the conversation went? Was it full of phrases like, he's cute and she's cool, and he's staring at you and she fancies you? I assume you didn't talk much about a gape or loving kindness unless, that is, you grew up in a monastery or an ashram. To the very young, love is only about falling in love.
Now, the word agape is about love also, and it is, as it happens, about unconditional love. So instead of saying unconditional love, he said agape. Agape is allegedly, it's a higher form of love.
Right.
Thank you.
Just the other day, my daughter Bo, who has just turned 5 years old, ran up to me all excited and out of breath. She'd been on her first play date with our next door neighbor's son, Jonathan, who is 7 years old. She jumped onto my lap and whispered into my ear, "Daddy, I really like Jonathan. He doesn't know it yet, but I think he might be my boyfriend." After that, Bo wore her best dresses, tried on a brand new love, put on a super happy voice, and hung over the garden fence for hours waiting for Jonathan to make an appearance. Jonathan really likes Bo, but he likes football more. And thankfully, Bo is too full of love and excited about life to have it get her down for long. Imagine what a difference it would make to children's lives if they were introduced to their eternal lovingness before they started obsessing about falling in love. Consider for a moment how much pain and confusion you'd have been saved from if someone had talked to you about unconditional love before you got swept away with the birds and the bees. When you remember that you are made of love and that you are deeply lovable, you can show up unconditionally everywhere. The more unconditional we are with each other, the more we experience real love in our family, with our friends, and of course in our romances. The early obsession with falling in love is a sign that we have already started to doubt our own lovability. By falling in love with someone, we hope we will remember how lovable we are. We hope someone will catch our fall in the fall from grace and thereby save us from the basic fear that I am not lovable. Much of the desire to fall in love is about being loved rather than being loving. As J. Krishnamurti wrote, you want to be loved because you do not love, but the moment you love, it is finished. You are no longer inquiring whether or not somebody loves you. Like Sam, we may fall in love many times over before we decide to stop falling and to start thinking about what real love is. Getting clear on what love is, unconditional love, specifically may mean that you have to unlearn a lot of conditioning acquired from parents, from school friends, from sex and celebrities, from boyfriends and girlfriends, and from society in general. What looks and feels like love often isn't love at all. As you embrace your lovability, you begin to see clearly again what love is. Similarly, as you learn to love others unconditionally, you also let yourself be unconditionally loved. So what is unconditional love? And how do you know if someone really loves you and if you really love them? Here are 5 ideas that I teach in the Loveability program that are relevant to every form of relationship, including romances. First, love is not an act. One of the joys of real friendship and true love is that we can both be our real selves in each other's company. Neither of us has to put on a face in order to be loved. We don't always have to be on our best behavior with each other. We don't need to put on a performance by trying to look good, be positive, be strong, or be happy all the time. Our love for each other is not about approval, it's about acceptance. I love you and you love me because we both really get each other. We both get a kick out of how much we enjoy each other exactly as we are. When you love someone, you love the person as they are and not as you'd like them to be. Unconditional love creates a holding environment in a relationship that makes it safe for you to be yourself. Love is not an audition. You don't have to turn yourself into a pleasing image in order to get the part. You don't have to be an attractive package. You don't have to be a beautiful person of yourself all the time. You don't have to dress yourself up or tone yourself down. You aren't trying to win a place in each other's heart. You live in each other's heart already. Unconditional love isn't about making the right impression. It's about intimacy. You don't have to act. You don't have to hide. You don't have to lie. Honesty is not a threat to unconditional love. As we get to know each other, we discover that we have many similar tastes, shared interests, and matching values. No wonder we feel such an affinity towards each other. That said, there's also space in our relationship for individuality, diversity, and eccentricity. Our love for each other is big enough to honor our differences. Neither of us has to be a chameleon, a photocopy, or a twin. We are extensions of each other, but not replicas. We are one, but we don't have to be exactly the same. In love, we respect that. For instance, we don't both have to be extroverts. We don't both have to be vegans. We don't have to like the same movies. We don't have to have the same friends. We don't have to hold identical points of view. We don't have to follow the same career path. We don't have to live our lives exactly the same way. We don't both have to be Jews or Christians or Muslims. We don't have to have the same color skin. You know you love someone when you can honestly say that you don't need them to change before you love them more. That said, we are changed by unconditional love. The change that happens is organic and natural. We stop being an image and we become more real. Love takes off masks that we fear we cannot live without and know we cannot live within, wrote the author James Baldwin. Good impressions give way to genuine intimacy. A deep acceptance of each other helps to heal the last remnants of self-rejection. Our conditional love for each other helps us both to grow into who we really are. The change we both witness is a mark of evolution and a miracle of love.
Good, thanks. Let's stop there for a moment. So we see here he's introducing the idea that unconditional love is he seems to think it's a foundational commitment to unconditional love for a relationship to become more than romantic falling in love, for it to be sustainable. He says we don't have to have a lot of things. He says we don't have to have pretty much anything in common, really, it seems like almost. And yet it seems the fact of it that in order to fall in love, in order to get past day 1 or 2 or 3 or the first week or two, it seems like that's not true. It seems like it's actually necessary to have things in common. At least it seemed very much that way to me, because I do use my social activity, my daytime, waking state time to do things that I like to do. Then, in fact, it would seem very suspect if I would be in love with someone and they would be not interested in anything I was interested in, that I would ever be possible to sustain such a relationship. To me, it would seem impossible. And I would think to myself, what the heck did I ever think was going on here? This person has nothing in common with me, except it seems like we're attracted to each other. But beyond that, it seems like there's nothing. I would be totally lost in a relationship like that. Personally, I still think that way. And maybe that's not necessary to think that way. But in fact, I do seem to be preconditioned to that. I wouldn't be able to unconditionally fall in love with people whom I didn't feel an attraction to, or a common things in common that we like together. And I still find myself having, perhaps holding on to that mistake in relationships that seem to be based on something that is shared interest. It seems I still lose interest quickly with some people when they say the wrong things. In my mind, it's wrong. Or when they do the wrong things, in my mind, it's wrong. Or when they just appear to be bored with the right things, in my mind, it's right to me. And so I find myself being still disturbed because of the way that my relationship with people seems to go.
Eric, can I share about that later when you're done?
Wait. I'll go.
You're just doing what I do.
Thing to say. So I see myself through the eyes of a watcher now, who looks upon my life. And when I have energy and when I'm fairly peaceful, this watcher can identify for me some of the upcoming problems that I need to see before I start to react to them in such a way as that it's predictable that I'll only make myself more weary or more frustrated, or find myself to be in more difficult situations if I don't listen to this more astute observer whom seems to know how to avoid the pitfalls and traps of conditions of acceptance of others. Now I'll let you speak all you want, Katie.
You mean I can talk?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Thank you. Yeah, when I listened to you, I got reminded that so every judgment, every judgment I make about others is a judgment I make about myself. And every time I forgive someone, it's forgiveness, self-forgiveness.
Mhm.
And Baba, forgiveness means to, so it's like I create a picture, or I make a mask and put that on the faces of other people, and then I'm upset. And for me, it's forgiveness to see that I'm not unhappy about the faces I see. I'm unhappy about the masks I put on the faces of all the people around me, and also about on the mask I put on my face. Like the personality is a mask. And when I listened to you, Eric, I saw that I made up, for some reason, I'm someone who is very interested in language. Maybe my next lifetime I will be interested in music. So in this lifetime, I'm judging people who are not interested in language. And by that, I'm reducing myself. And I'm learning, like I have this one neighbor, he's not very articulative. He's not good with words. And still, through him, I'm learning it's so valuable to listen beyond the words, and to put this judgment, this expectation, this need, this idea of a need, that I need someone who, I only speak with people who are articulative. I put that back, and then I had great experiences with him, because I saw he can give me things I didn't know I need. Like his way of sharing is so full of honesty. And so when I gave up that need I created for myself, where I deceived myself, I experienced that he has to share something with me
So it was kind of an adventure for me, and where we both get something, and I saw him more. It's like I saw him more clearly, like more whole, and not so reduced. And I also experienced myself as more whole because I didn't reduce myself to language. Done.
Okay, good. Thank you. So we see that there's many ways perhaps to find our way out of a dilemma in our minds. And I think it's going to become clear to people over the course of time as they have more experiences with these difficulties, whether it's through love relationships or whether it's relating to other people in general. When it comes to the facts of it, how am I going to get along with my coworker? Or how am I going to get along with my neighbor? Or how am I going to get along with this other person in any situation or circumstance? It seems like perhaps we need to be more in touch with this observer that says things like this, is that it doesn't matter what our interests are. We are one, it says here, and it doesn't matter exactly if we're the same. And then he goes down through a list of, say, look at, if you think it depends on any of these situational, circumstantial evidence of that you share things in common, then you're probably wrong. And so this is something that it seems like when I'm going to look at what is unconditional love, it seems like maybe I need to be really thoroughly investigating. Can I understand unconditional love? And can I hold in my mind that other people should be acceptable, really, no matter what they like or dislike, if in fact I want to get along with them? Because wouldn't it be easier, really, if I understood unconditional love? Not to be walked all over or anything like that, because that has nothing to do with it, I don't think. It seems to be, can I observe this situation in my mind with the kind of peace and the kind of calm and the kind of interest that perks me to continue with a relationship, no matter who it is? Can I do it or not? If I can't do it, it doesn't have to be a horrible failure. It seems maybe, and I've learned this, it seems that it means I need to learn something more that I really wasn't paying attention to before, because like your story, Katie, I didn't know I needed it. And there it was suddenly. And I started to realize to myself, I think I needed to know about this. Now, I don't think anything about the law of attraction and what comes into our lives is because we attract it. I think a similar way, but not quite that way. I think that what we happen to do is we happen to condition ourselves or decondition ourselves according to the way that we measure things. And as I began to become more important to me that love actually is what ties everything together, if it's going to stay together, it began to become clear to me. Love is like a glue, or it isn't like a glue. Either I use it properly, so it ties everything together without condition, or I use it improperly, and then I'm probably going to have problems with something to do with not being able to be loving, kind, and considerate and interested to maintain an interest. It seems like it diminishes my abilities and also my calm and my peace and my joy of what I like to do if I don't do things in such a way as it's more unconditional than conditional. So does that open up anything for you in that story, Katie, for you?
I thought Baba, I didn't let Baba speak. I was like, I took all the space, so I want to be silent. Let Baba.
Okay, let's.
The mic.
Do you want anything? Do you want to add anything, Baba?
I don't want to add anything.
Okay. Do you want to react to anything?
Do you mean me? Sorry.
Baba, I want to know if you want to react to anything.
I don't have anything to add.
No, I added before, but do you want to add? Do you want to react to anything? Is there anything disturbing or interesting, fascinating about this?
I have something to say about chapter 9, but we've already talked about that.
Go ahead. What about chapter 9?
Wait a minute. I have to.
I'll put it back on the screen if you tell me what paragraphs.
All right. to read a little because I've forgotten what I want to say.
Sure.
I'm so excited to listen to you, Baba. When you share, I will put my hand. How is the saying? Put my hand into the fire. That it will be very interesting. What you will say. You have great insights, Baba. So take your time to speak.
Something I already spoke about before was this ideal image of the way Sam went about it. As he was learning, he found an ideal image in mind.
Yes, I want to say something.
Mhm.
So we talked about the puzzles, and I want to say something connecting to this wordplay of puzzles.
Mhm.
So I think that most of those people who try to find their ideal partner, they have those insecurities within themselves,
Mhm.
which they try to compensate. Do you understand what I mean?
Okay, good. Yeah, sure. Let's go.
Baba is right.
So,
Let's not put videos on. Thanks.
so if you're trying to
Interferes.
find somebody, what?
The video interferes with my screen. It's nothing. Go ahead. So go ahead. You're saying that if we have insecurities in our own selves, then we may do what?
Yes, we try to compensate them, and most of the time, if you try to compensate them through another person, it can't function because you are not trying to work with yourself, but trying to work with another person. But first up, you would have to start to love yourself and then move on to another person. And in this case, I think that Sam, he doesn't even, I think he tries to avoid himself and distract himself with another person or through another person. He doesn't like, I think that he doesn't like to think about himself. And through this chapter, we could also see that he's a little, not a little, but very insecure. And maybe because of that, this relationship didn't work out with that model. Maybe she has noticed that he's very insecure and they didn't have that much in common. Although we did see in chapter 10 that you don't have to have things in common to build a great relationship. But I do think that they had a very, how do you say oberflächlich, Party?
Superficial love.
Yes, superficial relationship. And maybe we could also relate this to Gen Z. I'm not really sure if that's true, but I think that my generation is very, very not intrigued, but
Superficial. Sorry.
I don't think what do I want to say? Yes, I think that Gen Z, this generation is very influenced by non-detachment. They don't like to be attached to another person, and I think that hookup culture is a thing. It was there a long time ago, but it's still there, and mostly those people, they tend to distract themselves like Sam with another person, but it doesn't work out. So I think that this generation is, how do you say it? They like relationships with no strings attached. I don't say it from my experience,
Okay.
but I
So,
know people who are like that. Yeah.
Non-attachment is a word, is a how's it called? It's a term from Buddhism, and it's actually I think you didn't mean non-attachment. You mean people in our generation want to be in a relationship without putting themselves in it, without sharing something. They just want to get. Maybe that's what you want to say, because non-attachment means that they don't want anything.
what she said, no strings attached, is what she's really referring to. So, in my opinion, it seems that people do make relationships based on no strings attached. Some people are successful, it seems like, maybe, and so it seems to catch on. But in reality, it seems like really what we're looking at is a lot of infatuation and fantasy, and not being able or interested in sharing that really with each other deeply, but to continue to have relationships where, in fact, they can remain superficial. Do you think that's what you're talking about, Bava?
Yes.
Yes, I thought so. So I think that's what I heard also, is that you believe that many people in your generation seem to be basing their relationships on just momentary, just planned to meet their ideal fantasy for the night or for next week or whatever. And they make dates based on that sort of criteria. They want to have a nice time with each other. They don't want no strings attached, though.
Okay, that might be wrong. I just guessed it.
Might be wrong, so I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yes.
I'm not trying to categorize the generation at all. I'm just saying some people might think that way, and you seem to think that some people might think that way. I don't know if they do or don't, but what I do know is there does seem to be this story about that it's evident that people can do that, and I think that the evidence is probably wrong, probably isn't well grounded in reality, and it probably is a setup for failure also. If we don't know each other and we don't really care to know each other, then how can there be successful development of our personality, of the characteristics that we tend to see as loving and so on and so forth? I'm not sure that it can work out any better than this other way of seeing things as I want them the way I want them. And I'm going to look until I get the love of my attraction, my soulmate or whatever it is that people think they're going to get. I don't think either way actually is going to be successful, but we're not here to judge about it. We're here to just discuss it. So let's go on with this 10th chapter about can we recognize love? And let's see if you want to continue here with love is not a bargain.
I or Kati?
Bava.
All right. Second, love is not a bargain. I know it's common to talk about giving and receiving in relationships and how both parties should make equal deposits into the love bank. This sort of talk is typical of how egos make agreements and contracts with each other. Invariably, both egos end up filing separate complaints about giving too much love or not getting enough love. With unconditional love, giving and receiving are experienced in a different light. Love is a way of being. It is not a thing to give away. Love is an attitude. It is not a currency you buy things with. In love, nothing is taken or nothing is lost. Because love is who you are and love extends itself without ever leaving its source. True love begins when nothing is looked for in return. Love does not make deals. Love does not say, I will give you love, but first you must give me something else. Love cannot be bought. You cannot buy love with sex, for instance. If ever someone appears to be offering you love in return for sex, you can be sure that this love is a fake. Love cannot be sold. It is not love when a friend says, agree with me and I will like you, or when a parent says, do as I say and you have my approval. Or when a lover says, give me what I want and I will be happy. These ultimatums fear in fear and guilt, not love. In love, you can ask each other for anything, but you demand nothing for each other. Loves make no demands. All this talk about giving love and receiving love can make it sound like love can only be found in a marketplace. Love is not for sale. If you look with your heart, you will see that it costs you nothing to give love, because giving love is really just being loving. Similarly, there's not a price to pay when receiving love, because your receptiveness is just another aspect of being loving. When you're being loving, you are not making a purchase. You're not giving away an arm or a leg. You are simply showing each other how you really feel. This is why there's no loss in love. Because there's no loss and no invoice and receipt, there's never any debt to settle. I once found a most beautiful description of unconditional love in a poem by Hafiz. and translator Daniel Ladinsky called The Sun Never Says. It reads, "Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, 'You owe me.' Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole sky."
Okay, so here the author is, of course, allowed to make all of the rules about what is going to be in this chapter, and we have no say in that. But it seems here that he wants us to see this point pretty strongly here, that if we are giving and receiving of love, that we shouldn't have any qualifications on that we should feel it's an even exchange to give and or to receive love in whatever way that it might seem to happen. So we wouldn't judge it. We wouldn't qualify it and say to ourselves, that's not love. We wouldn't be judging about it. We wouldn't be discriminating about it. We would be open-minded to the fact of our partners learning about love also. And whatever it is that they're doing, well, that's perfectly fine. And in fact, I'm going to be able to work that into my routine here about myself, about how I'll be more loving, because I'm giving what it is I want to receive. I'll focus on what I'm doing and not be concerned about how does it affect her or him in my relationship with another person, but instead, how can I improve my ability to give love and therefore to be open to receiving it, no matter how it seems to be reflected, whether it seems to be reflected back by anger or by difficulties of the other person confronting themselves, such that it seems to be somewhat uncomfortable for me. I'm going to be able to unconditionally look through that and see through that difficulty in my mind to realize there must be a better way to see this if I'm going to remain in love. I am on my side of things needing to maintain and increase love in my mind. Otherwise, how could it be successful? And how could I remain unconditionally loving? So that's what I think the author is helping us to see, maybe. What do you think, Baba? Put you on the spot.
Can you repeat that? I didn't understand what the question is.
I wonder what you think about what he said so far. He to me, I think he's talking about the fact that if we can always be giving love and increasing that in our minds, such as that we want that to increase, that's all we really care about, then I think he's made a point here that not only is it unconditional, but it's also the best way to proceed in any relationship is to give all the love that I can imagine giving and to allow myself to take time in my mind to be corrected when I don't think loving thoughts. So I can be loving.
Yes, I totally agree. For example, in this passage, she also mentions that you should love your friends, although you might not share an opinion. And I think that this is very true because sometimes you might not like the opinion of the other person, and an argument or something like that. I can relate to this part because in the past I had some problems with my other sister and with a friend of mine. I wanted something in return because I did an act of kindness, and that was not right because I shouldn't expect their kindness because I'm kind to them, and that's why I agree with this passage.
I see. Okay, good. Thank you for your opinion. And how about you, Katie? Do you want to say anything about this second presentation here from the author?
You said something and I thought, oh, that's beautiful. I can't remember what you said. It was beautiful.
Love is not a bargain. So I'm saying love is not only not a bargain, but I'm saying that I want to see the increasing of it in my mind. In order for me to feel comfortable with you, it seems that I have to be able to increasingly see love about you in my mind. So it seems to me I have to see unconditionally love about you in my mind. So if you get angry with me, or you would find me to be boring, or you'd find me to be upsetting in your mind, then I would have to be able to work through that in my mind to see I can increase love in my mind to be able to eliminate that problem from my mind. My mind doesn't need to see you as being difficult or demanding or frustrating or frustrated. My mind needs to see you equally as neutral and as wanting to increase the joy and the love and the kindness of what love is all about. That's what my mind needs to see about you for me to be able and wanting to see that love, of course, is what is foundational to good relationships. Let's go on number 3.
I have a question.
Okay, good.
What's the word idolatry?
Idolatry means that I see things about what I want in terms of how I want to judge things, in terms of how I want to understand things, in terms of how I want to set up my life and so on and so forth, that there's an idol in my mind, an image in my mind. There's a structure in my mind that I'm sort of building along the lines of that. Everything that I think is based on idols is one of the foundational messages that the author wants to bring out. If we read it, let's see what he's talking about.
All right, thank you. Third, love is not idolatry. When I was 11 years old, I went to the Henry Beaufort School. There were 1,000 pupils at my new school, compared with only 75 pupils in my previous one. I was daunted by the size of everything and felt very lonely. I soon learned that the coolest boy in my year was Mike Ferber. No one was more popular than Mike. Mike ended up as captain of the football team, the hockey team, and the rugby team. The only team he wasn't captain of was the cricket team, and that's because I was the captain of the cricket team. Mike Ferber and I became best friends. Being Mike's best friend was wonderful and awful. I loved it and I hated it. Mike was so cool, but he was also moody. I allowed his moods to get the better of me. So when Mike liked me, I liked me. But when Mike didn't like me, I didn't like me. And when Mike ignored me, I hated me. I was too young to know what was happening at the time, but later I realized that what I'd done was to make Mike Ferber into an idol. When Mike wanted to be my best friend, I couldn't believe my good fortune. I felt like I'd won the jackpot, yet I was amazed that there was even a ticket with my name on it. I didn't feel equal to Mike. My lack of self-love made me turn Mike into an idol and into a source of love. Whenever you make a person into a source of love, be it a best friend, a parent, a lover, a child, that person also becomes a source of fear, unhappiness, and suffering. I'm happy to say that Mike Ferber and I are still friends. I sent him a copy of this book when it's finished, and I put a note inside telling him to read this page. I know I'll get a phone call when he does. Love exists only between equals because love recognizes everyone as equals. Therefore, in love, no one is better than anyone else, no one is superior or inferior, and no one is more lovable. We are equals because we are made of the same love. There are no different grades of love. When you don't feel equal, you give yourself away, and then you take on a role in the relationship, such as the sidekick, the martyr, the poor relation, the servant, the helper, the doormat, the cheerleader, or the chief polisher of pedestals. Roles prevent you from feeling equal. They block intimacy. They conceal dishonesty. You feel unlovable. In love, we raise each other up without ending up higher than the other. Love brings out the best in both of us, not just in one of us. If one of us gives ourselves away, then we also give our power away. And this is what causes power struggles in relationships. Power struggles happen because we think we are both separate and different from each other. We forget that we are made of the same love and that we both share the same basic interest, which is to love and be loved. Power struggles cause all sorts of fights in relationships, and the mindset that puts people on pedestals also blows up pedestals. It's only when you resume an equal position that you can take responsibility for your part in a relationship and be a more loving person. Recognize all whom you see as brothers because only equals are at peace.
Good. So he thinks that love exists only between equals, and he thinks that people that don't have the ability to have this increasing of love in their minds to remain in the fact of this equality, he thinks that those people, in fact, are deluding themselves by trying to create an idol instead of truth. So love, he thinks, is based on this truth of reality that we can't conceal our dishonesty. We can't conceal our unlovability. We can't conceal our difficulties. We have to face them with love. Not that we have to reveal them as shortcomings or as victim stories, but he seems to be telling us that we need to reveal them in terms of what true love means to us. So we always would be looking at what we want to increase, which is true love, not power, which is the use of love to manipulate other people. So he made clear here, I think, how that true love might develop in our mind so that it can increase. What do you think? Either one of you.
I think anything. What could be helpful?
Let's go on with section 4 then. Love is not special. And then we have one more after that. Love is not selfish. These are both similar. They're both sort of warnings also, but we're going to be hopefully looking at the other side of it, not just the warning side of it. How can love increase in my mind? If in fact I want to increase love in my mind, I must be giving of love. I must realize it has to be unconditional. And I must realize it can't rest on the need for idols or people to be my model of a perfect life. So they're outside myself as people, and I'm dependent upon them acting the way that is pleasing to me. I don't want to base my relationships on that. That obviously is what the author is talking about in terms of how we might idolize the relationships so that they destroy us sometimes and build us back up sometimes. And we're in this oscillating, uncomfortable place then, stuck in our humanness instead of in our divine acceptance of the truth that love is something that must increase as God's will seems to want it to be. Let's go on with section 4 here. Love is not special.
Can I say something?
Yes.
It came up on my mind. For my opinion, I think that it doesn't always have to do something with idolatry, because, for example, I sometimes when I fight with my sister, not Kati, I also get upset, and then my whole day is ruined. But I don't think it's because I idealize my relationship with her, but because I depend my self-worth on her.
Idolatry is codependency.
All right, let's
Oh,
finish, please.
I thought idolatry also meant that you have to idealize this person. I think that this person is perfect and that you have to obey this person or something like that too.
That's all. That's in part of idolatry, but to make yourself depend on and say, okay, I can only be happy if the relationship with if I don't fight ever, then you're also making it to an idol.
Wait, Katie, let's just talk about what you believe for yourself, okay?
Back up, Katie. Back up.
Yes, but I finished this now. So I think that I have to work on that, because it's not good for my mental health if I depend on other person or other people's
Okay.
mood or
Yeah,
opinion.
something similar to what the author was discovering, although in your case you see differences also, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Let's go on to section 4. Love is not special. And I don't want to rush us, but we're going to run out of time in the near future. So let's not discuss it as quite as much in detail for these next two, but let's look at them in terms of, are they saying something that actually, when we review it in our minds, when we read it again, or when we listen to the audio here, and we learn something from this? That's what we're looking for. So who wants to read?
I can read.
Thank you.
Love is not special. If someone says to you, I've been saving all my love for you, I can recommend you turn around and run for your life. Why? Well, it sounds like they never loved someone before. That means they must be completely out of touch with love. It also means that you must be their experiment. Good luck with that. I know it sounds romantic to say things like, you're the only one I ever loved, and you are my one true love, but honestly, that's not how unconditional love expresses itself. The goal of love is not just to love one person, it's to love everyone. Indeed, it is only when you're willing to love everyone that you will be able to love someone. Looking for the one, as my client Sam put it, creates what is described in A Course in Miracles as an endless, unrewarding chain of special relationships. The term special relationships refers to relationships that see people as objects of love. The goal of special relationships is to milk as much love as possible from your holy cow. The word special signifies an attempt to separate your holy cow from the herd so that you can live in a little field together somewhere that is fenced off from the rest of the world. This is how you split yourself off from oneness. You end up as an alienated couple. It is egoism à deux. You operate as a closed system, and one day you realize you are closed off from love. Love is not exclusive. In relationship, you can make exclusive agreements. For example, in romance, you can agree to monogamous sex. In friendship, you can share certain confidences. And in business, you can create soul partnerships. However, in love, you cannot attempt to love each other exclusively and succeed in creating a loving relationship. Saying I love you above all others might seem like a nice idea, but actually it is impossible. You can only love someone as much as you're willing to love everyone. This is how true love works. Making someone your special love object, your holy cow, doesn't create love. Rather, it leads to dependency, possessiveness, jealousness, neurosis, and 10,000 other forms of fear. As our love for our partner increases, so will
Yes, so will our love for everyone increase. Your audio stopped, so I assume your session is jammed. So when you love someone, you want everyone else to love them too, and you are happy for them to experience the joy of loving and being loved by everyone. So there's a reaction to the love that you see in someone else, okay? But in fact, don't forget from before, we want to increase the awareness of our mind about what unconditional love is, and not really to be judging someone else according to our definitions about what love is. We want to maintain some sort of semblance here of the truth in our minds as we go through the experience of exploring what love truly is. That's the need of this chapter, is for us to see, at least begin to see, what love truly really is. So love is not selfish. In his book called The Power of Unconditional Love, we read that as you consider going into a relationship, look deeply into your heart and mind to discover your level of commitment to the other person's well-being. In the dance of romantic love in particular, love is always love, but sometimes other characters like lust and infatuation masquerade as love. This can cause a lot of confusion and pain. I'm often asked how you can tell the difference between lust, infatuation, and love. So here's what the author suggests. Lust is a physical desire. If in fact it is lust, then the person that you're loving is the love object in your life. And you see them as mostly a physical character in your life, as primarily body. And your interest in your emotional and spiritual aspect of your relationship with them might suffer or might not suffer, but in fact, what you're most interested in is their physicality. Do you get along with them because of their physicality? I might be interested in infatuation as a mental desire. In other words, if somehow you represent to me intrigue and fascination as my love object, I adore certain things about you, then I might find myself that infatuation is what really motivates me about my increasing of love with you. Any of these things can be increasing. So love, that's lust based on physical desire, could seem to be increasing. So could infatuation seem to be increasing. But these two, lust and infatuation, definitely have their downside as well, and cause oftentimes for me to become judgmental. That's not what I was looking for. Now, love as a spiritual desire is another aspect that he says that we need to look at. Love is full of desire. You are intent on knowing the whole person and not just the image. Images that fall in love and then marry each other are still strangers. Love beckons to us to drop the mask and stop hiding. Then the real dance can begin. In love, the real dance is not about what I want from you. It is about what I want for you. So it's interesting here is that he's saying, if I want to increase love for you, then I want to see what is love for you in my mind to increase that for you. So I'm giving of that to you. However, let me put that word of caution out there. However, I'm susceptible then to getting attracted again to my physical desires and or to my mental infatuations. So this is a very delicate balance. When I love what's outside of myself, then I'm not really acting with my true mind, my peaceful and calm and relaxed, comfortable, loving self. I'm actually reacting according to what happened already. And it's going to become an important aspect of our understanding about reality is what we believe about reality has already happened when we believe about what happens in the world outside ourselves. Even in the current moment, it's difficult to separate what already happened from what is happening, because what is happening is wholly in my mind and not manifest yet. Then, in fact, I get confused when I start to speak, when I start to look, when I start to touch, when I start to taste, and so on and so forth. As my senses get more involved in what's going on, individually especially, then I begin to lose track with what is actually happening in the present right now. So unconditional love he's talking about is we care about each other's well-being. Unconditional love, however, does not happen because there are two of us. It happens because in our hearts, there is one of us. And that one of us is me, who must accept the fact of that unconditional love is based on me progressing in my spiritual life, such that love is what's all important to me. And that sharing it in terms of being able to see it in the world is all upon the rest of, do I see it increasing in my mind? If it is increasing in my mind, then my caution to see it in you isn't necessary, because it's increasing in my mind to tell me the truth is love must always be increasing. So I'm going to leave it there because our session was breaking up a little bit and I want to make sure the recording's good. Hopefully we won't have to do it all over again. And also we ran out of time. So next time we'll pick it up and talk a little bit more about unconditional love, and we'll see where this leads to in further discussion. Thanks, ladies. I appreciate your help on this, and I'm going to stop the recording.